when it comes to cybersecurity, and what are the action items that these municipalities and technical folks and community leaders like Nizar are taking. So for the next 35 odd minutes, I hope you will enjoy this session. I'm going to begin by letting each one of them introduce themselves a little bit more for about 90 seconds. Mayor Collier, I'll start with you. I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit about what's Ajax been doing with smart communities and your perspective on the cybersecurity piece.
Okay, well thank you, Ali, and thanks for the opportunity to be here and represent our great town. I'm probably the least qualified person to be up here talking about IT, so I'll hopefully bring through a different lens from the municipal point of view. My mandate and our council's mandate was attract business, create jobs, economic development, and I've always been very interested in the whole smart cities. I didn't know a lot about it, but it's been something that's been very interesting. So one of the first things we did was task our economic development department, and our manager, Lisa House, is here, as well as some members of my council. And they've been doing an amazing job and just going out and really moving this forward. Our Innovation Tech Hub will be announced and opening very shortly. We were talking about it behind the scenes here. It's very, very exciting. And these are just, technology is our future. And I've learned so much being at this seminar over the last couple of days, as well, as far as some areas where we're lacking and we really need to focus to help us move forward and protect us as a municipality. So a lot of stuff going on. It's very exciting. I can't talk too much about the details, but really looking forward to the big announcements coming.
Spot on. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. Scott from the city of Oshawa, tell us a little bit about your perspective on smart communities and security, and what do you bring to the table?
Well, Oshawa has been working quite heavily with both the education sector as well as partners in the economic space in order to help use technology, use AI, use new systems and new technologies to try and enhance our community, try and improve the kinds of services that we can deliver to the public, and at the same time either keep our costs level or reduce them. In municipal space, of course, one of the biggest issues we've got is that we have a very, very flat income slope as far as the amount of money people can actually afford to shell out. So the more we can do with the same or fewer funds, the better our community is.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Nizar, I'm going to turn it over to you to provide some Compute Ontario perspective on smart communities and cybersecurity. You got 60 seconds, sir.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Compute Ontario is a provincially funded organization under the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And basically what we do is work with universities to implement high-performance computing to support researchers and their professors. So by virtue of our relationship with government, I was approached about 1.5 to 2 years ago by senior public servants and ministers, actually, who said, Nizar, I can't get my hand around what is a smart city. I hear things in Vaughan, I hear things in Ajax, Kingston, all throughout the province, but I really don't understand it. So could you gather together a bunch of folks and tell us, what are the things that we need to know about from a security point of view? What are the things that we need to know about from a governance point of view? How do we help accelerate and move this activity forward? So we've actually produced a report. It'll be publicly available within the next couple of weeks on our website, computeontario.ca. And so what we basically found were opportunities are plentiful, but it really depends on collaboration between municipalities, the provincial government, and private sector in order to sort of move smart city initiatives forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nizar. Matt, from a Bell perspective and as a senior technical fellow there, I'm sure you've seen a lot from smart communities perspective and a telecoms angle. What's your take on how smart communities and Bell sort of come together?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm responsible for the technology direction and the technical roadmap for our enterprise customers. And as part of this, I have the privilege of actually talking to a lot of enterprise organizations in Canada. And what we've been seeing over the past few years is this phenomenon called digital transformation, which basically means that a lot of enterprises are being pushed by competitive forces and customer expectations into adopting technology in many different areas of their business. Smart cities and Internet of Things technologies are an example of this. And unfortunately, when you start adopting technology, the first thing you learn is, there are some risks associated with it. And the risks are not only associated with the program and delivery, but also from security perspective. There's actually bad guys out there who are trying to exploit vulnerabilities and make money from it. So there is cybercrime, and that's my focus, trying to protect our enterprise organizations and customers from cybercrime.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jayson at the Phelpsgroup. So Jayson, of course, with the Phelpsgroup, you're focused on executive recruiting. Just so that we can set some context around smart communities, can you shed some light on your perspective on smart communities and security?
Sure. Thanks, Ali. And I think next to the mayor, I'm probably the least qualified to talk about cybersecurity. Although I did start in technology back in my youth when I had a full head of hair, and I started my career that way. And then over the last 20 years, evolving around the human capital side and the executive search side, we do a tremendous amount of work across public sector. And I think similar to Nizar, helping municipalities really understand, beyond the technical skills, what do they need to look at? We have a line in municipalities and in public sector that getting results is really forging through ambiguity. And we realize today we need the skill set that includes the soft skills, the influencing skills, the communication skills, the leadership skills. And there's been so much focus on the technical side that I think it was KPMG that had a report out that 75% of global security projects fail because of a lack of soft skills. And we look at some of the headlines, I just had a few here, but Canadian execs right now, one of the top 5 business concerns right now is finding the talent around their cybersecurity and trying to attract that. From a public side, as Steve had said, the compensation's not there. You have to find other ways and be creative in other ways as well. 50% are saying this is a problematic shortage. So we thought we had a war on talent 10 years ago. Given we're expected to have over 75 billion connected devices by 2025, we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg on this. It's going to be a huge issue.
So as you can see, we have perspectives that are both focusing on people, process, and technology. And with that sort of runway, I'm going to dive into a little bit more on the smart communities definition and weave that into the threats and risks in the landscape from a security perspective. Mayor Collier, backstage, we were talking a little bit about what you would define for Ajax as the definition or the pillar of a smart community. And you had some interesting perspective on that with relation to technology and cybersecurity. Do you want to spend a couple of minutes talking about that?
Well, thanks, Ali. Smart cities, to me, we talked about what we're doing, and I think one thing that we have to do, and what all municipalities have to, is the government has to recognize the full potential of information technology and what it means, and recognize the importance, and that it's not just for the techie guys, that it's for the community as a whole. And me as mayor, I have to recognize that I have to put as much emphasis and effort into building and growing and retaining IT as I do in building new roads, new rec centers, and bridges, and maintaining our town. It's of that importance. And we talked about what we're doing, and I think as a future smart city, as a smart community, we need to be forward-looking, future-looking. We need to be collaborative. We need to be also able to customize, because things are changing so quickly, and there's so many opportunities out there. And one thing I can't really stress enough for leaders of communities is they need to really be cognizant and embrace cyber technology and cybersecurity. It's really that important. When I did my charter director training at McMaster through DeGroote, it used to be good practice to have an IT professional. I sit on a lot of different boards, a lot as a director, and it used to be good practice. Now it's standard practice to have an IT professional on the board. I mean, that's something that needs to be done, and we've just implemented that on some of the boards I sit in, because we've all seen what happens if you don't. And just even as close some of the attacks as Burlington, just as recently as 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago in June, they lost $500 to $3,000 to a phishing attack. Yep. Which is a lot of money, but to me, I think that they got off kind of light, because if it had been a ransomware or something like that, they could have shut down a municipality. And there's so many different things that are happening, and so many moving pieces when you've got hundreds of thousands of residents relying on. It's not just about stolen data. I mean, we need that to operate everything. I sit on the board of Lexicon, which is our public hydro utility. If we were attacked, I mean, they could shut down the grid. There's so many different things that could happen. And 180,000 customers across the region of Durham, as far as Belleville and as far north as Gravenhurst, could have serious issues with just electricity. So, I mean, all the hard work we're doing can be undone with one attack. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to protect ourselves.
Yeah, I think the metaphor that you used about you build roads, you build infrastructure, and now you're building the digital infrastructure as well, but there are cybersecurity concerns that emerge with it, is a really good platform to bring Nizar into this question. So Nizar, based on what Mayor Collier just said, from a Compute Ontario optic, infrastructure as a pillar of smart communities, we know that there's a lot of issues that come up from a cyber perspective there, but what's your take a little bit on the infrastructure and smart communities?
Yeah, I think it's first principles. Like, what makes for a smart city is the ability for information to be flowing into some form of a central hub and using it in a way that allows us to, reap the benefits from smart, in whether it's a community or otherwise. And so when it comes to infrastructure, I think those are actually the smallest challenges, to be honest. The technological know-how, whether it's through large organizations or through, even through organizations represented on this panel, that's not going to be the challenge. I think the challenge is really going to be very much to what His Worship had mentioned earlier around relationships as it relates to governance. So we have to put egos at the door, we have to forget about turf wars, and we have to recognize that a smart community is going to benefit all of its constituents, and that's why we're in the business we're in. I think it has very much to do, obviously, with approaching it in a systematic, reasonable way in terms of the cybersecurity protections and platforms that we put in place, because, again, building on what His Worship just said, you've created the capacity, and we've had lots of horror stories throughout this conference about situations where it's state-sponsored attacks that are happening. And the last thing we want to do is give them, especially in a place like Ontario and in Toronto, opportunities to shut down the grid, opportunities to get into our nuclear plants, things of that nature. And so I think that's really the second pillar that we want to begin to think about. But the third one is very much public awareness, right? So everything we do as public servants and in working in the public space is for the constituents of the province of Ontario, and it's their data as far as I'm concerned. And so it's creating the appropriate knowledge of the protections that we have put in place, the respect we have for the information, but speaking to them in a language that they understand. Why are we pursuing smart communities, and what does it mean for you? How will life be better tomorrow as a result of sort of the interactions we have with the data? So I think infrastructure, in the most broadest sense, to answer your question, must contain those particular perspectives as well.
Just sort of as a last comment on the smart communities pillars and what makes it. Jayson, what's your take on, you're focused on the talent piece, you're focused on recruitment, et cetera. What have you been seeing from the smart communities movement and the recruitment of talent?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in my mind, it is simple. There's a few questions that stand out that we're looking at continually on this side. Is that first question around where's the talent coming from, and how are we assessing it? There's still a lot of definition around what are the skills, what are those competencies that we need in these types of roles. Second question is how can we collaborate more? The whole co-opetition aspect as well. And I think to your point, we really need to break those barriers down. And the third side of it, third question really comes down to how can we be looking at this more as a national initiative? We can't operate independently. We're seeing state attacks. We're seeing this as a global threat. And so to me, it really comes around 3 C's, I would say, is centric, collaborative, and Canada. And if we break those down a bit, human-centric. These solutions have to be human-centric. As we see, we're in a world where loyalty is diminishing. The only way to increase loyalty is around culture. Public sector, again, doesn't have the funds to be able to do that. That second piece around collaboration, we need to be working private, public, multi-jurisdictional governments, academia. We all need to be working together on this, trying to find solutions to this. And the third one, Canada, I really do think Canada can be a global leader when it comes to cybersecurity. There are a few countries, I mean, we look at Israel, where there's huge collaboration statewide on that side towards cybersecurity, and some other examples out there as well. Canada has work to do, but we do need to really look at this as a much more national type of approach.
Thank you, Jayson. So thank you for setting that perspective. I think what you've heard is that from a smart community perspective, a smart community is one where the municipal government or government in general begins to understand the full potential of technology, not just for the techies, but for the young folk, for the senior folks, citizens as a whole. With that comes the challenge of process, recruiting talent. With that comes the challenge of infrastructure as well, maintaining it, sustaining it, and growing it. Now, with that context in mind, I'm going to turn to and start to dive a little bit more into the cybersecurity challenges, which is the core of this. So thank you for giving us that sort of that runway to take off from. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you now. From your perspective, sitting behind the city lens, what are at least two of the major threats and risks that you are seeing to a city from a cybersecurity perspective?
Yeah, certainly. So from our perspective, it's not so much just a case of the cyber aspect of it. Every organization, be it municipal government, provincial, business, your mom and pop shop, all of us are targets. Either targets of opportunity, actual direct targets because of information we have. So we're all facing the same kinds of issues. In the municipal space, what we often see as a major problem is a government, like a municipality, is running many, many, many different lines of business. So we have a recreation program, which, there's an entire industry involving recreation. We have roads and public works, which, there's entire industries devoted to this. In many cases, we have police services, fire services. Depending on which tier we're at, there's many different areas that we deal with. So unfortunately, from an IT perspective, in IT, of course, we're just one little cog in this machine. We have all these different lines of business that are then going out working with their partners in their particular industries to try and improve their line of business. And we don't necessarily have the insight into what those organizations are trying to do. So from our perspective, the biggest gap we've got is that communication and collaboration gap, both internally as a municipal government, but also with the partners on the outside. So a big thing that we're starting to lean towards is actually moving outside of just the nuts and bolts technical space where we're moving cables and moving bits and bytes, but more into a consulting role where we're actually working with other branches in our organization, working with partners, working with third parties like the universities like Durham College, where we're actually getting more into the consulting role, finding out what the best thing for these industries is, our internal customers, working with them to help them see where the advantages are to the technology that's out there, but also where the risks are, and helping educate them as to, okay, this is what you're doing, this is the kind of information you have, these are the kinds of risks that you can be facing from a security perspective and from an IT landscape perspective. Here's the things that we can do to help you mitigate those risks by being your partners in this, as opposed to simply being the guys that sit back, say no, or say, okay, well, how many computers do you need this year?
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to come back to that a little bit later on, the 3 C's that you mentioned around collaboration, communication, and to a degree, computing. And we'll probably come back to that a little bit later on, but I want to extend the same question to Matt, since not only do you see it from this municipal perspective, you see it from the enterprise perspective as well in terms of deploying smart communities. What to you are at least the top 2 to 3 threats and challenges facing smart communities?
So there's smart communities are unique and at the same time are not unique from cyber perspective. And to understand the risk, as a risk manager, you need to understand who the adversary is, right? Where the risk is coming from, what are the threat vectors, what are the methods that can be applied. And then you need to take a look at what it is that you're protecting, what are your crown jewels, what's at stake. And from this perspective, like cyber communities, smart cities are very interesting. To the cyber adversary, to the attackers, cyber criminals, it's a source of revenue, right? City of Baltimore was very recently held for ransom. It cost them about $18 million, right, to recover from the whole incident. people weren't able to buy houses or perform transactions in real estate, things like that, for a period of days because the city systems were down, right? So there's inconvenience. Researchers recently looked at connected cars. It's a research area, but they've demonstrated that by manipulating the system in the connected cars, they can actually cause traffic delays of 35+%. And then other research showed that researchers can put stickers on the highway, which basically divert a Tesla vehicle into an opposing traffic lane, right? Which could cause harm, bodily harm, or even death to somebody. Major collision on the highway, right? So in some cases, we have lives at stakes. The reason for that is that we have the convergence of digital technology, the digital cyber world, and people who don't necessarily care about people or lives, they care about profit. And they are in different geography in countries which do not necessarily have laws which prohibit cybercrime in any way. For them, it's legitimate business. The other part is that there's convergence of legacy technologies and new technology. So systems which were never meant to be connected to the internet become connected to open networks and become vulnerable to attacks. And of course, like the third part is, people's lives, the physical world is being connected to the digital world. So people who are affecting digital assets and exploiting digital vulnerabilities can affect actual lives. That's what's at stake with smart cities. That's why security is very important in this particular case.
Thank you for that, Matt. And I get the sense that not only have you emphasized that when it comes to security and smart communities, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but more than that, it's when you have the people and the process and the technology in place, there's policy that also implicates all of this, and numerous other perspectives that come into the applying to creating a more safer and a smart community. So with that thought process, I'm going to turn back to Mayor Collier. We've heard quite a few challenges and threats and risks that have been shared, and you're quite aware of them as you've mentioned a couple of examples. How, in your perspective, have you tried to address some of those challenges when it comes to growing your smart communities, but keeping it not just smart, but safe as well?
Well, I agree with what was said by some of the speakers. I think the people is probably the most important piece. We have a lot of employees, and I think we can all agree that education and awareness is key to secure digital practices, and it's not acceptable to sort of hide behind ignorance. We need to take this on. We need to be prepared. So education and awareness is key to security. One of the issues we have is, first of all, how do you educate? How do you train? First of all, how do you roll out a program without freaking people out? That's a little bit of a problem. So, we had an issue just a few weeks ago where an email was sent, and it appeared it was sent from my account to my council colleagues. Yeah. And it was directly from me to them, and asked them, I don't remember what it asked them to do, but it was something that I would ask them to do. They had personalized it. And thankfully, we have a very good group chat thing that we do, and they immediately said, what's going on? And we caught it before that. I think Paul Edwards is here, our manager of IT. First thing I did was send an email to him, and we squashed it there before anything happened, but we just weren't aware, right? So how do you educate the people? How do you train people that are already so busy and that they've already got workloads that are already sort of overwhelming? So, to add that extra to that. Yep. And finally, how do you manage it? How do you test it? How do you make sure that you're still up to the standard that you need to be at to protect your organization? So those are some of the challenges we face in day-to-day in our municipality.
Fair enough. And I think, thank you for raising the point on the education awareness piece. I was speaking to some of your colleagues, and that's one of the reasons why, as you folks heard President Lavisa mention it yesterday, we've partnered with the town of Ajax to launch a certified threat intelligence analyst training. And I think those kind of programs and partnerships really look at innovative, more interactive ways to bring condensed training sessions and certifications to our community. And it's sort of agnostic of age as well, right? So looking for the youngest certified ethical hacker or the network defender is a very good place to start. So thank you for that, Mayor Collier. Steve, I'm going to turn to you just a little bit here. So a speaker yesterday had mentioned something quite intriguing. Well, all of them were, but one particular sentence that could go on a shirt, which was, what was it? It said, dance like nobody's watching, but encrypt like everybody's watching. Something that you've done, besides the collaborations that you've done with the post-secondary community in Oshawa and beyond, what's some of the unique steps that you've taken to keep the community safe from a cybersecurity perspective?
There's a number of things. One of the ones that we did was actually, we were one of the first municipalities in Durham to actually create a IT security role within IT itself. So within operations, we actually have a exceptional individual who is our network security manager, actually handles not just oversight on the security side, but also helps work with others as far as educating people. So that was one of the first things we did. Likewise, we were also one of the first municipalities in the region that actually developed a cyber emergency center. Our former CEO was very, very, very interested in the cyberspace, very aware of the risks involved, and was very insistent that this is something that we needed to do in order to help protect the municipality in the event that there was a cyber incident. So these are a couple of the things that we've done. Likewise, education of our staff has been a key priority. Network intelligence is something that we focus very heavily on. Partnerships in the cyber intelligence community and cybersecurity space are things that we focus very heavily on to try and ensure that, yes, we know we're targeted. We are targeted all the time, same as everybody else is. At least do as much as we can to ensure that, if Oshawa's in the paper, it's for the right reasons, not the wrong ones.
Thank you for that. And again, just extending to how I commented to Mayor Collier's comments, is that's another one of the reasons why the finals, for example, of the Global Cyber Olympics is coming to Oshawa. We have connections with our other municipalities where we'll be doing sessions in relation to that, but bringing in those community or those environments where you can test, train in a safe space, learn what the threats and vulnerabilities are, and bolster your own potential is key to that. So thank you. And Steve, you've been very, very involved with us at the college, so thank you for all of that, because it reflects in our own practices. Keeping with that line of thought again, in terms of good steps and good practices for cybersecurity and smart communities, Nizar, what was one from an infrastructure perspective? You see a lot of big data, which simply means lots and lots and lots of data. What's one good step that you would say could address the threats?
So beyond the technology protections that I think we put in place, it builds on what many of the people on the panel and Mayor Collier said. It's not being afraid to raise questions, right? When something looks odd, it likely is odd. The way in which people access your systems is quite purposeful, and they will use very specific techniques that have been harnessed and trained over time. So I know even with regards to the 4 or 5 data centers we have throughout the province that host much of the high performance research capacity and data, often if there's even something as innocuous as an email, there'll be a quick communication around saying, was this real? And these professionals, these are cyber hacking professionals. It's not often the kid in the basement that you stereotypically think about. These are people who've gone through behavioral science techniques and training and will very purposefully monitor and seek the right opportunity. They're very patient people. So it's not a question of if you're going to be attacked. In my mind, it's a question of when will you discover you've already been attacked? It's often a function of people have already likely gotten through your back door and have left, little pieces that they're going to pick up later, and it's finding that right time. So even today, simple practices like putting my out of office have signaled that the president and CEO of the organization is out of the office. And so that's a great time to send an email to my EA saying, hey, I'm out of the office. I can't get access to my email account. Can you help me out here? Very reasonable thing that I would likely ask. And all of a sudden they've got in, right? So it's being aware and questioning, looking at the email address. You know, it's got my name, but then it says .google.ca or gmail.ca or something, and they're like, well, that's kind of odd. So I think in many ways there's some simple things that you can do, and then rely on the expertise of people like this audience for the technology solutions that we can apply.
Thank you for that, Nizar. And there are two things that I want to pick up on. You mentioned the technology piece and the people piece. I'm going to take those 2 points as we address potential steps that you can take. And I'll start with Matt. Matt, from your perspective, so sitting from a municipal side, or even us sitting at the college, we get inundated by folks throwing solutions at us, ideas at us, etc. From your perspective, what is one way in which we can develop our strategies in an effective manner where we can put all our solutions together and use them effectively, opposed to just saying we have solutions in place and not know how to use them effectively?
From my perspective, the most important piece is to build a framework around it, right? So things like security. Security is part of a risk management process. It needs to be built into what an organization does. Every time a new investment, a new change is made to the digital systems that support an organization, it needs to trigger security review, right? So you need to understand on an ongoing basis, and as they change, what are your critical assets? What are the things that are important or attractive to the attackers? What are the things that are very important for you to protect, such as, you know, citizen data that you may be collecting? Right. Secondly, you need to put protections around these key assets, right? So they need to be in place. They need to protect against things which people already know are bad. And you wouldn't know how many people will try old tricks and how many times they are actually going to work. The third thing is you need to have capability to detect the things which get through, things which were not previously known. Right? So you need to, these anomalies, these things that just, you know, feel off, you need to have institutional capability to detect these and analyze these and detect whether, you know, they are malicious or not. And thirdly, when something like that happens, and to your point, Nazir, you will be breached, right? You will be attacked. When that happens, you need to be prepared and you need to have capability to respond effectively on the spot. You need to have the playbooks to do it, like any good coach, right? And the fourth thing is to look at the environment, scan the intelligence, see the changes that in the tactics that the attackers are applying, and then adjust your security posture. Put the money where the most risk is.
Put the money where the most risk is. Noted. Jayson, building up from there. Obviously now as you're in the space of recruiting talent, specifically within municipal government-like sectors, community sectors, you're obviously seeing requirements of certain skills in order to address these challenges. What are some of those skills that you think folks are looking for in order to find the right people to keep the community safe and smart and secure?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think skills is a huge piece. There's a number of areas we're partnering with our clients as well as other organizations trying to define still. Skill-based is a huge piece of it. The leadership component's a big component, but we're still trying to define and what that looks like, the experience gap that exists right now, and the loyalty gap. And there's a parity gap out there, which is huge, and I won't go into any of those right now, but happy to talk afterwards. So there's a few different areas around skills, and it is coming down to those soft skills. It's the skills around influence, it's the skills around the communication skills, it's that partnership, that outward mindset that we're not doing this together anymore, and we have to work more collaboratively. And you know, there's some huge gaps around the talent side. We're sitting, I think there's about 8,000 cybersecurity roles alone in Canada by 2021-ish that need to be filled. So this is a huge challenge, but there are some unique pieces that organizations and some countries are actually doing to address some of these aspects. And better defined career paths is a huge aspect in cybersecurity right now. Stronger cultures, giving broader tech, but also cybersecurity folks a way to feel engaged in the organization, feel engaged in where the strategy is going, and a part of that, giving them a voice as well. The other side of it that we're seeing some great work post-secondary, of course, is really starting to work on the programs and doing some great work on that side. But we need industry and academia to be partnering more closely, more nimble programs, more connectivity with industry. We're seeing this shift to skills-based training versus credentialing today, and we're seeing a big focus around that area. So industry and academia really being able to tie in together and connect. And then I go back to this does need to be a national thing. We can't do this in a silo anymore.
Thank you for that, and I would agree. So, for example, when I mentioned that for our team at Durham College, the prototype that we're building in cybersecurity and AI called AEYE, it began sort of just with us and our partner, the corporate partner. But with time, we've already added about 8 different additional partners to join into that project in order to scale and size, and it certainly increases the impact. We've got approximately 4 minutes left, so I'm going to turn it to each of you for some very quick 30-second closing comments by asking you this. If you've seen one super practice or one super community that in smart communities that is getting it right from a security perspective, which one would it be? Or what's one thing that you've seen as a best practice that you're looking to adopt ASAP? Who wants to go first? I'll leave it open. Miracle here.
I'll go first because I'm on the end. One of the things that the first speaker yesterday said that really resonated with me was you have to have the mindset that either you've already been breached and you just don't know it yet, or you're about to be breached. And that's sort of the way I've been looking at things, and that's why the first thing we did at the start of this term was hire consultant task staff to create a full IT strategy. I think you have to be prepared, and that's one of the things that we've done. Hopefully that will point out any deficiencies we have, what we have to do. When I talk about a municipality that's doing it right, of course I'm going to say Town of Ajax, because I'm a little bit biased, but I mean, I think we are, and we've looked at building relationships with research companies and with educational, and our partnership with Durham College and the AI Hub has been great. Working with your team has been amazing. Bringing the CTIA course to Ajax and starting the training is an enormous first step, and I hope that's just the one of many. Don, right? There's Don. I hope you're listening. I hope that's just the first of many, and I hope we're going to really expand that program because I agreed with what you said, Jason. Like Canada, I think we can be leaders in this. And I think in Durham, we've got what it takes, in Ajax especially, we're moving forward. And we're really willing to partner with these organizations like EC Council and everybody else and really get this moving. So if we can expand that suite of products and maybe tailor them to the community and what's needed, I think education is key, and I think that's what it's going to take to move it forward. And I think we're probably doing it right.
Jason, I'll give Jason and Steve. I'll go with Jason. 30 seconds.
Sure. I'll jump in quick here. Our time's getting limited, but I think to your point, Mr. Mayor, I heard a comment. We're just coming through the final stages of a CISO recruitment for a very large North American municipality, and one of the lines I heard was there's only 2 types of companies: one that has been hacked and knows it, and one that has been hacked and doesn't know it. And I think that from my sort of closing remarks on this, I come back to this culture piece. I come back to the skills. They're critical, the technical skills, the analytical skills, but in your hiring and building your cultures and building your organizations, do not forget the human-centric piece of it. It is so critical. We need loyalty. We need individuals to stay and feel part of the organization. We're coming into this gig economy. But I think with the right leadership, the chance to really give staff a voice, upskilling. HR leaders getting hammered with upskilling right now because they can't find the skills, so they're upskilling their current staff. Career shifters, mid-career shifters that are getting retrained as well. Think out of the box, but don't be afraid to partner. We need to work. We all need to work together on this because it's a huge, huge challenge.
Steve, some quick comments?
Yeah, one thing I'd really like to say is along the same lines of recruitment, you can always You can always pay to get people pieces of paper. You can pay to get people certified. You can pay to get people trained. Having someone who's got the natural aptitude, the natural ability, those leadership qualities, is something that you just cannot train most of the time. So if you find the right person, don't be afraid to spend the money to turn them into the person that you need them ultimately to be and have the skills you need them to be.
Thank you, Steve. Matt and Nizar, any closing comments before I conclude?
Yeah, from my perspective, the real key is to think about security the moment you start thinking about implementing a digital transformation project or a smart city project. Get the right people on your side. Make sure that your supply chain understands cybersecurity. Get the experts, right? And to your point, the real experts, right? People who actually understand and can do a threat model for the technology that you're going to apply in the project to make sure that it's sound, right? Even before you go past the visioning stage.
Nizar?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll, because I realize time's up, but one of the statements that resonated with me was President Obama on his last day. And someone said, what does the future look like? And one of the things he said was, I'm so excited because I do not believe another ounce of blood will ever be spilled in warfare in the future. And someone said, well, that's a remarkable statement to make. Why would you say that? And he says, because all wars will be cyber wars. And so I think this is real. I think this is something that we need to think about. And I think it's something that, to reinforce what every single one of the people on this panel have said, it's not something you do by yourself. You do it with education, with relationships, and you collaborate to protect those things that are most important to all of us.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I want to thank you once more on behalf of the organizers, and more importantly, I know that you've made mention that a couple of you are not in the cybersecurity space, but you're involved in the community and involved in smart communities. For whatever it is worth, your 2 rupees of ideas is worth quite a lot on stage, so thank you so much for it. I also want to thank the city of Oshawa for supporting the panel, as well as the town of Ajax, as well as the entire Durham region community for really supporting Durham College and the AI Hub in this pathway and in supporting us in bringing the Global Cyber Olympics Games and such panels to the community. So thank you all. To the city of Oshawa once more, there is an address from the mayor that will be posted across CyberX's social media, so I encourage all of you to take a look at that, and this will be the first of many engagements that we have. So stay connected with us, especially from the AI Hub's perspective, Instagram and Twitter. We'll get all of the updates there, and I'm always available if you'd like to talk to us. Gentlemen, thank you once again, and much appreciated.